Welcome to Happy Invasion of Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, ask a guest to choose a story, but you can't guess which one it is, and I commentate along, dropping facts and observations all the time, remaining positive and trying to identify my guest's favourite thing about each instalment.
Hello, Toby. As you can see, I'm recording this urgent message from Gallifrey. For the people from your podcast who don't know me, I am Nev Fountain. I am a writer of many things. I'm mainly known for comedy because I contribute to Private Eye and Dead Ringers. And I do write some murder mystery books with a science fiction twist. The story I want you to watch, Toby, is set on Gallifrey and it is called The Invasion of Time.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to... It's been a long time coming. The final episode of The Invasion of Time. I have passed through all the joy of the festive season to get to this part of proceedings. The finale. Oh, the Christmas tree has come and gone. But anyway, let's not tie ourselves down to the present, because that is not a good thing to do when it's Doctor Who, especially you might be listening. You could be listening to this at any time. You could even be listening to this after I've died. There's a weird thought. But I suppose we're watching a programme that's got lots of people in it who've died. So it's becoming... It's funny, isn't it? Because, in the olden days, there are some people, some members of one's family that, you have like 3 photos of. But now we're so used to having moving footage of people that we know and love. And in some cases it was, largely if they were in things, maybe, you'd see them acting as other people, like William Hartnell. We have so much footage of William Hartnell playing Doctor Who, but then there is something weirdly different, isn't there, about seeing him as himself in that grumpy interview he gave. So it's very different. But yes, the idea to the modern generation that you might have scant visual or audio record of a loved one will be baffling to them. Where will it all go? I wonder if in the future, you'll have to have sort of ombuds people come in and say, well, I'm afraid nobody's accessed the video files of Jim Smith from Southend, so he's taking up all the space in the aftercloud or something, and we now have to. He will be deaccessions, and there'll be a Pamela Nash of the real world going, well, nobody wants this stuff. Nobody liked Jim Smith from South. What's he called? Did I call him Jim Smith? I was going to call him Jim Peacock. Did I call him? No, I knew a guy called Jim Peacock. Anyway, whoever he was, that man I made up. He'll have a working title beyond the Jim Peacock and The Edge of Jim Peacock. And and then somebody will come and say, oh, actually, it was called Inside Jim Peacock. You go, you leave your peccadillos to yourself. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Anyway, why am I talking about that? I don't know. What I should be talking about is The Invasion of Time, episode 6. And of course, to lead us into that, we have the responses to episode 5, and I'm sure some of the Patreon correspondents will be discussing what is to come in episode 6. Some people already have. The conclusion of this has been looming like a dark cloud. Jason Thompson says, it's going to make my job easy, isn't it? For accentuating the positive. Jason Thompson says, excellent choice. Won't say what it is just yet, for fear of spoiling for listeners at this early stage. I see. That's my choice for episode 5. Yes, because this is under the recording of episode 5. Regarding the 2+4 structure for 6-parters, it seems odd how much that gets trotted out, considering I can only think of 2 stories that really do it, namely this one and The Seeds of Doom. Seeds does it superbly with its 2-part Antarctic prologue. This one, not so much. There's really no plot in the final 2 parts. It's a chase through the corridors of Gallifrey, followed by a chase through the corridors of the TARDIS. This goes on until Storr says, oh, sod this for a game of conkers. I'm going back to the Panopticon to blow it up instead, and then get shot. And no, sorry, but for me, overlaying the TARDIS hum on shots of characters wandering around on film through corridors and storage areas of a dilapidated building does not an effective TARDIS interior make. And then Leela leaves. And I cannot believe that after making it an explicit plot point in earlier episodes that the wilderness outside is her natural habitat, and having her fall in with the Outlers, earning their respect and leading them in an assault, Graham Williams writes her out by having her fall in love with the captain of the guard of the boring indoor upper-class twits. Her perfect alternative was right there. It's true, isn't it? I mean, having had poor old Jasko and Abliff killed off pointlessly, I don't think Max Faulkner even has a line in this episode as Nesbin. And, you could give him something to do where he sacrifices himself nobly, for the posh people whom he has rejected or is agin or whatever. And that would leave a power vacuum at the top of Shabuganville, if they are indeed the Shabugans. Let's not get into that. And Leela could have said, well, I need to lead these people because we've only got Gay Waterhouse left, and she's got too many horses to look after. Louise Jameson is bloody marvellous, though, says Jason. And bless her and Chris Tratchell for realising this ending made no sense and trying to add in some business between them in their scenes together throughout the story to make it seem a little less random than it actually is. The ever-reliable David Gillespie Pratt replies to the ever-reliable Jason Thompson to fantastic correspondence. It's always good to hear from. Talons has a 4-2 structure, though they are woven together a bit more seamlessly. Yes, I was going to mention Talons because I'm sure Holmes had that in mind in terms of how it's budgeted. The first 4 parts set in and around the theatre, and the final 2 with the House of the Dragon. Jack and Lightfoot only meet in part 5. Oh, that should be Jago. Autocorrect. Jago and Lightfoot only meet in part 5 and gives the second segment a boost. The Armageddon Factor has a more 2/2/2 format, 2 mostly on Atrios, 2 on Zeos, and 2 on the Shadow Planet. That should in theory work a lot better than it does. I think Sharda has a similar structure, but it's much harder to tell. Adam Parkin says accents in sci-fi are an interesting one, and there's been a lot of talk about accents. And I think there may be a little bit more. I've had a preview of some of the messages. There's a run-up, right? Pernickety pants coming up. I actually don't mind a Cockney Sontaran, as it does make a difference from the RP so common in British productions. It's like how almost in Star Trek, almost everyone on Star Trek has an American accent, and is what made the Australian accents in Farscape so refreshing for me. Yes, but if everybody spoke RP, Adam, as will happen in the world that I rule, apart from people who give you butter and do manual I can hear people switching off in droves now. Then it would be simpler. Everybody speaks in RP, except for the odd peasant, no matter what country they come from. A Cornish peasant in Paris is absolutely fine. This is how I was brought up on television. Then it wouldn't be a problem. So, yeah, you may think it would be improved by having all these different accents. I think it would be improved by everybody speaking like what I does, as I say, except for, surly factotums or country folk, and I am a country folk. But I've got my eyes on the horizon, folks. Mr. M.L. Dunstan says that was an entertaining episode. This episode is really running up and down long corridors. It's a shame the Sontarans looked really shoddy, and that even without them removing their helmets. But Tom Baker was so good, natural. Leela is absolutely fantastic, and will be a shame when she leaves. This episode was still engaging and entertaining. The Winkle Group, anyone? One of the tools Rodan was using to modify the TARDIS. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Emil. I like the way that Mr. Emil Dunstan's just sort of very to the point, bullet points that get right to the marrow of the argument. Lisa and Andrew, your use of the word lofty, which I did a lot in episode 5, I'm very sorry, has put in my head the image of Don Estelle playing one of the Sontarans with a pith helmet on. That's from Troby, to specify which of Lisa and Andrew. Troby is Andrew. Yes, I mean, I did say lofty so much and yet didn't invoke Don Estelle from It Ain't Half Hot Mum, who played the character Lofty, one of the few people to have helped a Doctor Who alumnus get to number 1 in the charts, for he and Windsor Davis sang Whispering Grass in character as the Sergeant Major and as Lofty, because it was revealed that Don Estelle had a beautiful singing voice, a much better singing voice than he had acting ability, dare I say it. That got to number 1, and Windsor Davis was, of course, in Evil of the Daleks. There is an 8 half up connection. This is appropriate that I'm doing this week because as I record this, a few days ago, I was at the unveiling of the plaque to mark the origin of television, 100 years to the day, 26th of January 2026. since Stooky Bill was demonstrated to journalists by John Logie Baird in a building on Frith Street in London that is now a Bar Italia and an Italian restaurant. And the owners there put on a great spread. Martin Wilkie, son of Bernard Wilkie, the BBC Visual Effects Department founder, who also worked on Quatermass, invited me along. And I was there with all the stars: Sue Pollard and Rory Bremner and Nick Cottonoff of EastEnders, Angela Rippon, and various TV types, but also Melvin Hayes, also off of It Ain't Our Fault Mum, but crucially for me, the last surviving actor as far as I have been able to ascertain from Quatermass 2. And I'd interviewed him over the phone about 12 years ago. Katie Manning hooked us up, actually. They were in a play together. That was very nice of her. But we met at last, and that was very nice. And he's verbally agreed to come to the launch of my book, which, as I record this, will be out at the other end of the year, which, if time flies as quickly as it currently is, will be in about 3 weeks' time. Anyway, that was a segue, wasn't it? That was an uninspiring meander down probably a not very interesting corridor. That's going to set you up for what you're about to enjoy. Anyway, thanks, Lisa and Andrew, for mentioning Don Estelle. A perfect response to the overuse of the word lofty, which enabled me to mention It Ain't Our Fault Mum, which took me to Melvin Hayes, which took me to what I've been doing this week. I like to see patterns in things where there should be none. John Hall says, according to the Ninth Doctor, lots of planets have a north. In this story, Commander Store is proof that Sontar has an east end. Yes, I'm not sure how I feel about that, although, again, Pernickety Biggs will suggest that we're not actually going accent-wise to the East End, but we will get. I'm sure I haven't deleted that message. Yes, I'm sure it'll come. Shane Plays says, my subtitles via BritBox said Finkelgruber, not Winkle, if that makes you feel vindicated. There was a lot of chat about the Finkelgruber. I'm surprised a drinking game hasn't emerged over the years where people take a shot every time Milton Johns gets flung by a Sontaran. Yeah, I didn't really like that bit. My personal favourite moment from this episode is when Barusa calmly requests, if you could just open the door, the scantest of moments from the Sontarans blasting him. Yes, I do think that is good. And I think I chose John Arnott, though, didn't I? I can't remember. Because of moments like that. It sort of reminds me of another favourite Who moment from Robot, when Tom Baker is changing outfits after regenerating, and at one point he pops out as a sort of Viking warrior. Do you think I might attract attention? The Brigadier. It is just possible. So understated, so perfect. Yes, I like that kind of sort of dry humour as well. It's a sort of very British tone to it as well, if one can invoke such an old-fashioned idea. Shane Plays also says, he says, having just said everybody in the world should speak in one particular way. You're not sure you're not turning your back on colonialism, Toby? Shane Plays also says, Toby, for my end, I totally understand how worn out you were in December, and rest assured, wordplay somewhat intended, there are no negative feelings on my end with your current schedule. Anyone who is irritated or similar probably doesn't quite get what it takes to put the stuff out that you do. The advent calendar with Chef's Kiss and the memorial video is so well done and comprehensive. I needn't have read that out. I wouldn't have done had I remembered what it said, but I'm taking the very kind comments of Shane. It's always hard to balance what you're producing in this day, but I do charge people. We have a Patreon, so I have to keep up the content. You who are listening to it for free, yeah, you can wait. But no, I do appreciate it. But I've sort of made a rod for my own back, because I have set myself quite a hefty schedule, and you do think, well, if my schedule drops, will suddenly everybody leave me? And also people are entitled to expect content, and it's also good for me to be up against it, because it means I will do it. Although today I'm doing this not only a day late, but much later in the day than I'd intended, because my computer is glitching and I don't know why. And then I think I've temporarily sorted out the glitch, and then I was trying to work out the speakers, because the video of this has been recording in mono. I've now got it recording in stereo, but through a not as good microphone. So if you're watching the video, sound's not coming through here. It's coming through up there, and is, I think, probably not as good. So, we're with the videos, we're in an experimental phase. But I don't know how many people are going to watch them anyway. But I'm constantly trying, everybody, constantly trying. So even if it is a bit tatty and a little bit, I haven't quite managed to pull it off successfully. I like to think I perhaps put in effort, which is not me blowing my own trumpet. It's more trying to put into context some of the criticisms I might have of what we're about to watch, especially as the remit of this is to accentuate the positive. David Green says, "Crikey, I hadn't noticed before just how bloody noisy K9 is when he trundles. Motor screaming..." Oh, but thank you, by the way, Shane. I appreciate your comments. Motor screaming in perpetual first gear along those long corridors. If you were trying to mount a surprise stealth raid, you gently tell him to stay in the TARDIS. Poor old lad. Jonathan Evans says, yes, he's very, very noisy. I'll have some things to say about K9 later, David, I'm sure. Jonathan Evans says, while appreciating the story's shortcomings now, I have to say I found it thrilling on first broadcast, when I must have been about 6 or 7. I prefer the Sontaran mask design to Styre's, though not Lynx's, despite the fitting issues, and I don't mind the Cockney accent. It wouldn't work if it were the full Dick Van Dyke, but I can rationalise it as simply rough and gruff, aligning with Robert Holmes's description of them as tough and tasteless. Your mention of the... I think that's only if you eat them, Jonathan. Your mention of the lowering, glowering Lord Reith brought to mind another example of studied literary silliness. Churchill apparently referred to him as Wuthering Height. Ha! Someone really should have Lofty Disdain as their drag name. Thank you, Jonathan. Good contributions. David de Gillespie Pratt is back, saying, thinking ahead to part 6. There is a moment with the Sontaran nearly falling in the pool that everyone remembers, but there's also the moment where Storr puts his helmet on at a dramatic moment, and it's so askew it's quite ridiculous. I can't help but wonder if in the gallery they debated another take, but someone said, "We professionals notice, Joe Public never clocks a damn thing." Points to anyone who gets that reference. Derek Deadman says Jason Thompson also grips the helmet too hard when he takes it off, making it very clear it's made of foam rubber. I do like the extra band around it to distinguish him as the commander in group shots, though. This is the first time we've had more than one Sontaran together on screen, after all. That's very true. I wish they didn't walk like dicks, though, Jason. Not like dicks, but like dicks. David Gillespie Pratt says, one last thing from me. Obscure fact time. Louise Jameson has the distinct honour of being the only non-Doctor actor to be credited on the cover of the VHS release. I believe the story came out at the time where Louise was starring in EastEnders. No doubt someone somewhere thought this would be ideal for some cross-promotion. I can only imagine what fans of Rosa DeMarco made of the Cockney Sontaran shenanigans. I had forgotten about, but that's quite right. Whereas I think in Classic Who, when they have a single caption, Bonnie Langford is the only actress to share a caption with the actor playing the Doctor, because they both get they both get captioned together on part 1 of Delta and the Bannermen, because it's got too many actors in it. That, yes, I'd forgotten about that, but that is quite right. Louise Jameson credited on the cover. All these things are a series of lots of different decisions, which is why I get cross when people get them wrong. But yes, that's clearly somebody went, well, yeah, she's famous for EastEnders now. That'll get them in. Simon Curtis says the Invasion of Time does have occasional acting issues, but regardless of that, I love it. I even once wrote a blog on it. Simon, of course, is a recent contributor, a guest to Happy Times and Places, having guided me through Colony and Space. I won't splurge all of that here, says Simon, other than a bit about the last couple of episodes. It does falter slightly in the final 2 episodes after the big reveal at the end of episode 4, a cliffhanger which does the job, but could perhaps even have been directed with a little bit more dynamism, though these episodes have more than enough in them to keep you entertained. The Doctor, Leela and Rodan walking through the same room over and over always amuses me, and the Sontaran jumping over the swimming pool and nearly taking a huge tumble as it trips over the sunbed is my top 10 unintentionally funny moments in all of Who. The Castellan in this story is a simpering imbecile. So a simpering is a fantastic word for Milton Johns. And you wonder how he's managed to keep Gallifrey safe during his time in the post. Have you encountered any of the Home Secretaries of the great United Kingdom in the past couple of decades, Simon? However, Milton John's magnificently put upon performance means he comes across as someone who is doing their best in an unexpected situation. Perhaps. More likely he's just trying to stay alive. Well, I think that's it. He's the ultimate sort of wheedler. Leela's exit is somewhat rushed, but the consequence is very well done. The Doctor, head to the TARDIS door, declaring "I'll miss you too, Savage," is a tender moment, and with a bit more time dedicated, it could easily have been as emotional as the ending to The Green Death. It isn't quite that, but it is lovely nonetheless. And Simon's put a link to his blog for the rest of that article on the Patreon, which anyone can come and see. You can join the Patreon for free to access all of the written material. So if you want to check that out, do go to Simon Curtis's blog. John Hall says, "It will always delight me that the Sontaran who trips on the sunbed and nearly tumbles into the swimming pool, it was played by Stuart Fell." Yes, nominative determinism in action. Terry Walsh's real name was Terry Falls Off Ladders. Oh, I could do this all day. Roy Scammel's real name was Roy Falls Off Buildings whilst after sunbathing in his pants. That's a long name. But Mark Boyle was Mark Crashes Cars. Oh, I'm just entertaining myself here. Colin Varney Earworm says, "Hey John, that's up there with Harrison Chase's butler in The Seeds of Doom being smothered to death by rampaging foliage, being played by Seymour Green." Yes, indeed. I wonder if that was important with the casting. And Frank Shale says, "Stuart fell well," as Sue Perryman, the wife in space, once said. If you don't know The Wife in Space, because I suppose it's a few years now, The Wife in Space was an excellent blog that became books about the wonderful Neil Perryman and his equally wonderful wife Sue Perryman. He a Hoofan, she a not we, watching together, and Neil writes it up brilliantly, and Sue is just a genius observer. Colin Varney Earworm is back. "There's not enough plot for 6 parts, so let the Sontarans have the next dance. And this test is a litmus. Canine's not just for Christmas. Even Leela can't dodge Cupid's darts." Oh, we took some getting there, Colin. Dance and parts? Whoa, well, I suppose you do dance with parts, so what you get for proximity you lose in rhyming. But thank you, Colin. I always appreciate your ditties. And I suppose Colin is from Australia, so who knows? Parts and dance may sound much closer as RP ebbs ever further away as we get to the other side of the equator. Frank Shale says, "Episodes 5 and 6 really step it up a gear. Perhaps my favourite Sontaran episodes ever." Nurse screen. Welfare check on Frank Shales, please. "So amazing to see more than one of them." I hadn't actually thought of that. There is that thing that we suddenly have Hordes 3 for Sontarans. Can't have been cheap. The sound design, well, because you only see one mask, Frank. That's the clever thing about the helmets. The sound design is also cracking. No wonder the DMAT gun got put on the BBC Sound Effects LP. Oh, those were the days. Do kids today listen to Sound Effects MPs? MPs? LPs? And if not, that's because they have other choices. Oh, here it is. Bignell. "A few months ago," says Richard, "while covering..." I'm going to give Richard a stupid voice. "While covering the arc on the Happy Times and Places, it was quite rightly pointed out whilst covering the first episode that Jackie Lane was not, as had often been stated since at least 1977, doing a Cockney accent when she started playing Dodo, and that rather she was playing her as a Mancunian. So I wonder why this strange thought still persists," says Bignell, "as evidenced in the coverage of Part 5 of The Invasion of Time, that Derek Deadman is also doing a Cockney accent when he plays Storr. Derek was born in Fulham, so clearly he wasn't a Cockney himself, and I can't hear any trace of what I would call Cockney in his performance. It just sounds like Derek's normal voice with some added guttural intensity in how he's performing his lines. Is this a case of Toby falling into the miry pit? Miry pit is a good word. Good phrase there, Richard. Of received fan wisdom. Or is there generally anything in Deadman's performance in these 2 episodes that I've missed that would qualify as being Cockney? No, Richard, and you've put a smiley after it to show you have got your cat. You've seen a load of pigeons and you've flung poor Tabby right into the centre. I suppose, I would argue we're not doing the same as mistaking a Mancunian accent for a Cockney accent as fandom was doing with Jackie Lane, because we have such limited horizons. And it does kind of invoke what I was talking to about everyone talking MP, that we heard so few regional accents that anything that wasn't RP was considered by Cockney by TV viewers of a certain age. All right, Derek Deadman is... Yes, Derek Deadman, what I mean by, Storr being Cockney, Derek Deadman is doing his London accent. And yes, Fulham is West London, Cockney is East London. But I think Cockney has... Yes, in the strictest sense, it's East End, all of that. But so maybe we have to say a London accent, because... But there are still real similarities. There are differences between West London and Cockney, but it also sounds better to say Cockney Sontaran than Sontaran, whose glottal stops are probably closer associated with the Fulham area. But he's London, isn't he? And own ground. We will fight you on your own ground, Doctor. So yes, it's not your quite full on Cockney. So, but I think when people are saying Cockney, Richard, they just sort of mean distinctively London. Although yes, your pedantry has stood you in good stead up until now, and we've discovered a lot of Doctor Who facts due to it, but also sod off. I love Richard. Richard, by the way, he's done some really good work recently on my behalf, and I'm very, very grateful to him. But also, he can sod off. Sort of what I meant when I said I don't mind the Cockney and hear it as rough and gruff, says Jonathan Evans. Perhaps it's that Cockney is sometimes shorthand for a generic London accent. Thank you, Jonathan Evans. You're the new Richard Bignell, which is something very different. Isn't true Cockney quite rare now? I've lived in South East London for 30 years and worked across West, Central and East, and have barely any memories of encountering it. Yes, what Jonathan Evans said, Richard Bignell. I'm going to turn off the Bignell signal for a while. I'd be the one that loses out. But no, strictly speaking, Richard is correct. He did once put on a forum that Peter Bryant was dead, though, when he wasn't. So, nobody's perfect. Matt Foy. I think it's the last 2 episodes running round corridors and indeed swimming pools ad nauseum that makes this one a bit of a chore for me, says Matt Foy. When things should be looking up, as we are Stan McGowanless, finally. That being said, the commentary on Wonderful has encouraged me to give this one another watch in the not-too-distant future, as there are lots of positive points I often overlook. Well, that's hopefully one of the jobs of this podcast, is that it just gets you... It's nice to revisit a story we might have written off, or just think, I'm never going to see anything new in that. That's all. Yeah, because what we really need is to watch Doctor Who story for the 9th time that we might have not have watched for a few years, instead of, broadening our horizons, going outside, kissing our children. Chris Williams says, I've been holding off making a comment about the invasion of time because, whilst I can give you 10 positive things about Underworld, Meglos, or the Armageddon Factor, like other listeners, I find this a right old struggle, especially in the last 2 episodes. The reason is something you've already touched on. It's not because it's rushed or sloppy production. It's not because it's a rushed or sloppy production, but because it gives up in trying to convince. I think you said it breaks the contract with the viewer. Very well put. Why, thank you, Richard. When we were kids playing Doctor Who in the street or garden, we'd say stuff like, this shed is the TARDIS, this upturned bin is the console, this stick is a super laser doodah, and generally just make up an adventure as we went along. Just suddenly making up a threat. Ha! I've trapped you in my mega force field, garden hose, and pulling out a solution out of thin air. Aha! But this Omni tractor beam gun, trowel, will get me out of it. This feels exactly like that. Do you know, Chris, you are onto something here, especially with the TARDIS interiors and workshop. Things like the Black Star, the Great Key and the DMAT gun just appear from nowhere with no sufficient background or logic. And it's always been a bit odd, hasn't it, that the finale features a search for a mysterious, powerful key and an inexperienced, in the real world, time lady assistant, but has nothing to do with the following season. With a bit of planning, they could have a better setup than the first 5 minutes of the Rebos operation. Yeah, I mean, it's odd, isn't it? It's if there were fewer similarities, you'd go, well, it's okay because they had to do expedient things, but the similarities make it go through. But there are sort of missed opportunities amidst the mess. Okay, so end on a positive. Louise Jameson. I am continually grateful that all these years later we're still getting further adventures of one of the best companions that the series ever had with one of the best actors the series ever had. And this time absolutely fulfilling the potential that was always there. Hooray. Oh, she's brilliant. Sorry about the long post. You're probably about 34 minutes in now. I'm going to tell you. 30 minutes. Yeah, about 30 minutes, Chris. Oh, P.S. It just occurred to me at the time of filming, Blue Peter was running its keynote appeal. Money was raised by children sending in old keys laying around the house. I wonder if, to save them even more money, they borrowed a few boxes from Biddy Baxter to hang in Perusa's office. Haha, but that's a lovely fact, Chris. I like that. Well done. Jason Thompson says, the Part 5 cliffhanger really is one of those, oh crap, we need one here, make something up ones, isn't it? The Castellan plays with some levers we've never seen before that has some strange effect on the TARDIS that we've no prior inkling of, and the Doctor flicks a switch in the TARDIS we've never seen before, and that fixes it, never to be mentioned again. Yeah, I've got all this to come. Nev Fountain, our guest, is back. Here he is, who's been obviously watching along with us and just seeing if he can remember anything he said the 75 years ago that he made his contribution. Nev says, I think before we finish the Invasion of Time, we have to talk about the Time Lord Constitution, the time elephant in the room. It is a system as fiendishly full of holes as the American Constitution. Something I've never fathomed is this story establishes that the Chancellor holds the Great Key because no one else, particularly the President, can be trusted to hold it. So what about Chancellors that go on to become President? We have to assume, because Goth was able to be in the running to be President, that Chancellors becoming President is not an unusual occurrence. Therefore, I can only hypothesize that during the ceremony to become President, when the President joins with the Matrix wipes the President's mind of all knowledge of the Great Key. Something like what happens to the Doctor at the end of this story, which makes sense. But there are logistical questions raised by such an odd system. Why didn't Chancellor Goth give the Master the Great Key? Did Perusa leave himself post-it notes when he became President so he could use the Great Key with the Rod of Rassilon to find the games room of Rassilon? All theories gratefully accepted. Oh, Christ. My theory is the Invasion of Time was written after The Deadly Assassin, and they didn't think anybody would bother to check or think about it 50 years later. John Hall says the obvious smart answer to why Goth didn't give the Master the Great Key is that the Great Key, as presented in The Invasion of Time, had not yet sprung from the minds of Graham Williams and/or Anthony Reid, and that Robert Holmes, lacking the ability of precognition, was thus unable to incorporate it into The Deadly Assassin. That's what I said, John. However, this is a patently unsatisfying response to Nev's intriguing observations. All right, which point out yet another plot hole in this hastily cobbled-together story. Perhaps an in-universe explanation is that it is the wisdom of Rassilon. As unsatisfying as that is, we will be all that we mere mortals will ever know. Yeah, I think so, John. Paul Murphy's in studied literary silliness, which was a phrase that Nev used that did tickle me in the last one. Lovely phrase, agreed. Really does resonate through Who, doesn't it? For me, in a related sense, the thing that sets Doctor Who apart from, to cite the cited Star Trek, is there is always more of an overarching feeling that while the show may have been conceived in part to be educational, it didn't presuppose that audiences were uneducated. Consequently, there's a lot of studied literary and cultural reference, silly or otherwise, peppering the narrative and dialogue. Doctor Who has always provided good nuggets of mental protein among the storytelling fibre. Oh, Paul, I like that. Nuggets of mental protein amongst the storytelling fibre. We read that the Invasion of Time really is providing some fabulous observations, and I think that's a very good point. And I think what is wrong with television today is that all that stuff would have a blue pen with it because the people in charge of putting television out there, assume audiences are stupid. I think that's partially because we've given the power to make television to stupid people, so they think audiences are as stupid as they are. Not all of them. Some just think people are stupid because they're a bit too lofty. But anyway, I think nothing ever good was done by assuming your audience is stupid. I think of Susan's prediction about the decimal system in the very first episode, continues Paul. The Daleks invading the Mary Celeste, Lemuel Gulliver in The Mind Robber, Buddhist philosophy in Planet of the Spiders, and so on. Oh boy, could I go on. At every turn, the show has assumed its audience to be clued up, intelligent, and engaged with what's going on in the wider world, or at least open to learning. Dusk may not understand the Titanic illusion, but all of us at home do. The positive, inclusive outlook seems at odds with the way that adults are traditionally regarded as viewing the younger generation as callow, ignorant, unaware they were born. However, when you consider how television and film nowadays is often thought of as more rushed, less subtle, much louder, and overly didactic than in earlier times, it seems the fault lies with the audience's attention span and more to do with the modern film and television makers assuming the audience not to be intelligent and culturally literate. It's a self-defeating, faulty first premise. Oh, well, that's what I said. That's definitely what I said, Paul, but you may have said it better, so perhaps I should have waited for you. That's a lot of words for me to invoke that hated phrase, everything's dumbed down nowadays. And I'm certainly not saying anything new, nor do I think it's wholly true, but I do think the contract has two sides to it. If you fling peanuts, eventually you can only expect monkeys. Rant over. I'll be back to pampas grass peregrinations from now on. P.S. No offence to monkeys. I like monkeys. I like your comment, Paul. That was very good, very wise. John Hall. I think I'll let that speak for itself. I won't dilute its brilliance by trying to say what Paul said, but in different words with more stuttering. John Hall says, ironically, the holidays... Is there anybody in Rome that hasn't made a comment on the invasion of time? We are now currently well over your 34 minutes, Chris. Ironically, the holidays-related pause between parts 4 and 5 of this would-be epic have allowed my Tom Baker rewatch marathon with a friend who hasn't watched these stories in decades to catch up to this point. As others have already pointed out, things I was going to say, like Rodin's Part 5 scene with the Doctor feeling like a companion's audition piece, I shall try to stick to less debated elements in the invasion of time, aside from Leela's exit from the show, which leaves so much to be desired. As others have pointed out, making Leela of the Outsiders, presumably following Nesbin's death by Sontaran, would have been a far better choice than marrying her off to that drip Andrid. Or, failing that, Leela could have stayed on Gallifrey to remain with Rodan, with whom she shares a far more screen time and has far more chemistry. Plus, this would have had additional bonus of giving Mary Whitehouse an aneurysm. Death by Lesbos. Alternatively, couldn't the writers have swapped Andrid and Rodan around, with him being the meek technician traffic warden with whom Leela bonds and stays on Gallifrey 4, and she being the rigid head of the Chancellery Guard who learns to loosen up and throw in with the rebels? Speaking of rebels, why do none of Andrid's 4 supporters regenerate after being shot? Well, people don't do that. You can die if you're killed as a Time Lord. The Castellan didn't he, in the 5 Doctors? I'll concede that in The Deadly Assassin we have Time Lords killed outright by Staser Blast, but what about the 2 Chancellery Guards felled by the Outsiders' arrows? Are they bog-standard Gallifreyans who can't regenerate, or should they have gotten 2 arrows in the back, 1 for each heart? Oh, that's very true. Oh. Lastly, I wanted to give a shout-out to the updated special event. And also, there's a lot of sort of collateral damage there as well, isn't there? Because the Outliers are essentially goodies, and they are essentially killing guards who are just doing their jobs. Lastly, I wanted to give a shout-out to the updated special effects on the DVD Blu-ray releases of this story. Perhaps more so than a handful of other classic Who tales, The Invasion of Time really benefits from the wobbly, crackling sheets of Bakerfoil cling wrap, a.k.a. saran wrap to we colonials of a certain age, being replaced by humanoid shapes of fizzing energy. As a lifelong Doctor Who fan, I can deal with most less than special effects, but the original Vardens were always a step too far for me. Nitpicker alert, says Jason Thompson. Nitpicker alert. Try saying that when you're drunk. I can't say it when I'm sober. Nitpicker alert. Saran wrap and Bacofoil are different things. Saran wrap is basically cling film, plastic wrap, whereas Bacofoil is, as the name suggests, aluminium foil, or, to the Americans listening, aluminum, I believe. You sprinkle oregano in your aluminum, and then you put it in a vehicle and spend some leisure time with it. There we are. That's Module 1 in How to Speak American with Toby. Both essentially in any kitchen, but only one has the shiny, shimmery, crackly properties needed for an invasion of Gallifrey, I fear. John says, thank you for your clarification, Jason. In that case, the nearest American brand name equivalent to Baker foil would be Reynolds Wrap. There you have it, the Reynolds Wrap. It sounds like a 1980s top 10 hit, but it's not. It's just, I don't even say Baker foil. What do we call it? We call it tinfoil. We just call it tinfoil. And we call, what's the see-through one? Cling film. Tinfoil and cling film. That's what they're called in House Adoke, and they live next to the greaseproof paper. I found this to be a really interesting discussion, says Mark Trevor Owen. Not what I've just said, but thank you for rescuing my little meander with that sentence, Mark Trevor Owen. You and Nev have both come up with some really good observations. Rewatching the story, it's a game of 3/3. I now concede that the first 2 episodes do build up an interesting idea. The next 2 are actually pretty solid, despite some weak visuals, to end on a great cliffhanger. However, the last 2 are woeful in both plotting and presentation, and reinforce my view that this is my least favourite Tom story. As you say, Toby, it's the air of contempt that drags it down. There are other stories where the money clearly ran out, where the visual elements don't match the writer's ambition. But there, generally, all the actors and the director work hard to counterbalance those failings. That doesn't happen here. For me, The Invasion of Time is the polar opposite of Sharda. They got 6 episodes worth of material in the can, but somebody should have ruled that some of it just isn't of broadcastable standard. Perhaps they would have been better off filling the slot with a repeat of Talons and sticking a line into part 1 of the Rebos operation like, well, K9 is certainly K9, it's certainly quiet round here since Leela went back to run her own planet, which would be a better departure for the character. Oh, gosh, well, it's all right for you, Mark. I've got to be positive in the imminent 25 minutes. And Jason Thompson, who's made many a comment throughout this and is now making the last one. I've slightly delayed this one as well because I didn't think there were many comments, so I was giving people a chance to comment. There's loads of comments here. Jason says, Arg, how is it only on a rewatch last night I noticed the foreshadowing that the Doctor talking to himself in part 2 about Barusa being the key, in this case to a locked door of his own office, turns out to be almost literally true in part 5. Also, the ultimate weapon in part 6 is a big gun that dematerializes people. What? Also, the ultimate weapon in part 6 is a big gun that dematerializes people. What, like the ones all the Ogrons and humans had in Day of the Daleks? Pretty sure we have seen a whole arsenal of weapons far more ultimate than that before. Yes, indeed, Jason. Well, look, that's plenty from you lot. 40 minutes from the correspondence. So, without further ado, let's watch episode 6, the conclusion of the Invasion of Time, in 3, 2, 1. So it's taken quite a while for me to get through the Invasion of Time. I used to do some of these. I'd do the whole story in like a day. But I make room for the correspondence, which adds some extra content. But I think the insights that we get are very good, and they spur me to think on things too. And we're very lucky with the quality of people who contribute, so thanks to them. But yes, so the Invasion of Time, just as a recap, it was a story I was very excited about as a youngster. Didn't know about the Sontarans first, then got it as the target book. It was a target book I coveted, but got it quite late in my video collector days. It's weird. Tom Baker is being odd here. He's sort of, he's holding the camera's gaze, but then the way he lies back here, it's sort of how you do it if you're being a bit half-assed. And he does that quite a lot with episode endings, where he does a kind of, I'll go through the motions, but I'm daring you to ask me to put a bit more welly into it. And then we have a bit where he goes and smashes something, and maybe that smashing, you're supposed to hear the clatter on the floor, but it does make you think, because you're used to what the production is like, oh, has he broken a bit of the set? And that sort of thing there's been a plethora of wobbles and tinkles in this. And Storr's eyes are very wonky here, but it's more the angle of the camera actually than the angle of the helmet. I like the attempt to show his eyes beneath the helmet. That gives us a sense of what lies beneath, because we haven't seen the Sontaran face yet. And I think anything that gets animation within a monster is good, but the angle didn't help there, and so again, it compounded by the other shortcomings. It makes us inclined to be less generous, doesn't it? And it's uncomfortable watching that Kellner and Storr dynamic. It's not nice seeing him sort of shove Milton Johns so much, but actually it's a sensible piece of thinking in terms of the storytelling. It shows just how far Kellner is prepared to be abased in order to get what he thinks he wants. And here we have the Sontaran mask. And I remember being hugely shocked watching this on slightly blurry sort of bootleg. It looked like he'd got a moustache. And there's no reason a Sontaran shouldn't have a moustache, because Lynx has, spiky hair. I like the sort of spiky, beardy hair, but especially when it's made of spikes rather than just... It looks like it's just in the latex, doesn't it, in the two Doctors ones, which are wanting in a number of areas. It sort of looks like he hasn't had much sleep. But I remember being quite shocked and not liking... It's not a sort of pleasing look. It's quite sculpted, isn't it? But there's no reason that they shouldn't be. But they are. I mean, the Sontarans, it seems to me, get less organic as the show goes along. But I think it actually is it's certainly a better mouth than the Steyer one, isn't it? Which is a bit more of its own beast. And it's only because we're watching in really, really good quality that you can sort of see the joins with the mouth and the eyes. I don't think you'd have seen that initially. So I'm prepared, because I remember when I saw them on the cover of the Target novel, I didn't like them. They looked slightly wonky, lopsided. I think I preferred my Sontarans to be sort of very symmetrical. Lynx is the best one. And sort of knobbly, but actually, no. It was the shape. It was a sort of Toby Jug shape that didn't quite work for me. But actually, I think it's quite an expressive mask. I like the hair. I like the rings around the eyes and the dark mouth. Especially now, it doesn't look like. I swear, when I first saw it, I thought he's got a moustache. He's got a black moustache, which crucially he then doesn't have later, because there is a discontinuity between the makeups, just as was with the scarf in the first scene. Another example of just this story pulling you out of itself at turns, which makes us, I think, less inclined to buy this, which we know is a swimming pool. It looks just like a swimming pool. Swimming pool, a hospital. Will we have remembered the swimming pool from the first episode? Anyway, let's not get into the swimming pool. We're in the hospital, and we've got lots of this period of Doctor Who comedy where Tom Baker gets bolshy, and Leela sort of very calmly points out that he's getting bolshy, and then he gets a little bit sort of defensive, and she finds that winning. Whereas, rather annoyingly, that Tom Baker's actually probably being more bolshy than that, and Louise Jameson is giving the scene a warmth that is probably not being lit by the battery of her co-star. So, which is again another reason that she is constantly she's providing a lightness of touch where it needs to. She's doing all the comedy bits that that sort of Tom Baker sort of gone, why don't I do this and you do this, and she's not, and a lesser actress would not help them, because some of them don't deserve help, because some of Tom's wilder comedy ideas just need stepping on. But actually, she works her hardest to make them work. She is worth her weight in gold. But it's sometimes diminishing returns. The Tom has an idea, but she doesn't seem to be an unwilling participant, even though we know he was not very cooperative with her. I quite like all this greenery. It doesn't look too sparse, as those kind of sets sometimes can. But it's a weird melange of designs, isn't it? Because sometimes we're on location that has had to be co-opted. I mean, I don't think you get the impression that you're in the TARDIS here, and you can be quite fun this sort of thing of we're going round the same place, and the Doctor sort of seeing through the haze of identical rooms and finding a way. That's quite Time Lordy. That's quite fun. I think it's just that it's on film and it's an obvious brick building. That even if it just had some roundels somewhere, and the show, the story has not earned our trust, I think. So I think we're less inclined to do what it's asking us to do. Maybe I'm just finding a highfalutin way of going, the various disparate design elements don't cohere. But I think there is a bit more to it than that. And it's a shame because actually having some of it shot in real places, you would think, oh, well, that's much better than having to do it in front of a load of flats in a TV studio. But it shows that it's not. It shows that going on location can be a poisoned chalice. We will do battle on your own ground, Doctor. See, that's what I mean. That's not Cockney, but it is London. And it's also, he plonks his helmet on the wrong way. And it's also, unfortunately, Derek Deadman has several sort of vocal shortcomings. He can't really say his R's, battle, and he can't say his L's. So he goes, battle on your own ground, Doctor. I mean, I love Danny Peacock as an actor, but I wouldn't cast him as a Sontaran. K9 with the thing on his head. They do a lot of that, of having to sort of stick things on and in and around K9. See, in these stairs, I think I would normally sort of welcome and go, these are realistic, but I don't know, it just doesn't cohere. This story visually, it doesn't cohere, and this just doesn't say TARDIS to me. Yeah, and plot wise, we're just running around the TARDIS. It's funny because I think we're programmed to go, oh yeah, the invasion of time. It probably kicks in when the Sontarans come because we like Sontarans, but the Sontarans don't do anything. Oh, look at him. There's so much going on behind those lips. But basically the plot of this episode is the Castellan has pressed a button that's made the Doctor have to press a button and hypnotize Rodan to make a thing. And while the button pressing and the thing making is going on, everybody is chasing after each other, which, yeah. And as mentioned in the comments, the fact that Romana comes in the next story as a helper for the Doctor, with just a little bit of sort of foresight and tweaking, that there could have been a sort of melding of the ideas here, and definitely a better exit for Leela. And it just slaps of ladies, and the fact that we've got a whole host of characters running around, namely Nesbitt and Presta, who will get a credit, who will get an episode fee. This is bad use of the budget for doing absolutely sod all. And it's how you'd write a story at school or play in the playground, as people have said. You'd come up with all these ideas, but not actually have any particular plans for them. Whereas I do like that. I do like the image of John Arnott coolly sipping through a straw and reading the Daily Mirror. The fact that it's the Daily Mirror, I think, is rather witty. I almost prefer it. I'd almost prefer it if the Doctor didn't look at the headline and go, I had nothing to do with that. I think it's a funnier joke if he's just reading the Daily Mirror and you leave it at that. Sometimes there's a danger, and I think especially when you've got actors with big egos going, should we try this? Should we do that? Or writers trying to, be smarty smart, that you do one joke too many. Now, this is the famous moment, of course, of the Sontaran tripping over that has famously been left in because it's a mistake. But actually, we don't know that because because he is supposed to stumble and he is supposed to end up on his arse when Andred throws the chair at him. And he's more likely to end up on his arse if he trips over the sunbed and has a chair thrown at him than if he just has a chair thrown at him. And actually the second fall, which is the one where he goes down on his ass, is not as well pulled off because he uses his hand as ballast, whereas the first one looks like a real trip. Now, it could be because it is, or it could be because it's a very good stunt that shows that the Sontaran has misanticipated how the robustness of the Sun Lounger, and that starts his sort of stumble that enables Andred to take advantage of that situation and enable their escape. But again, because we are inclined to think of this production as being tatty and last minute, we immediately go, that's a gaff. I like the smashing of the glass. That was sugar glass that they put in especially so that he could smash it. This doesn't work at all because you think, well, he would see him. And then we've got that thing of Andred having to react to being shot, but without reacting to being shot. So I remember it not being especially clear the first time I saw it. And also, if Leela's there, out of shot, so we can't see her because the camera can't. But again, Storr, there's no way Storr would have missed her. And there's a real hiding in plain sight there, which is a real shortcoming of the direction. And we can see... We can see these two just sort of edging closer to each other in order to try to make the ending land. God bless Chris Tranchell. And I sort of like that where he's about to do the left, right down the corridor, and she just goes, "No, that's not funny, Doctor. I'm going before you do that joke again." And you sort of almost think a lot of that stuff should have happened behind the scenes. What is that? What is some of that drapery in that set? Deja vu, yes. She's grabbed his hand. Yeah, well done. I actually like I like the visual here. I like seeing the Sontarans amongst the greenery. It's just a welcome visual. It's a visual that has interesting contrasts in what I have to say is, I think, possibly the worst designed Doctor Who story up to this point. Certainly, I think that I've covered in Happy Times and Places. Oh yes, it's that he gets eaten by the plant. I'd forgotten that. I rather like that. It's like a giant crinoid pod, isn't it? You would think if this was a smaller shot, you'd think they'd repurpose the crinoid pod. So the Doctor shaking that. I mean, we get annoyed, but he does that a lot, doesn't he? He does that trip in the chronic hysteresis as well. It's a very sort of Tom Baker thing to do. But yeah, shaking the hand of the Sontaran in the giant crinoid pod is not too far away from "you won't mind if I don't join you in vengeance on Varos," but because it's a Sontaran and not a person, we don't mind quite so much. I mean, this just says, underground of an old building, doesn't it? It does not say TARDIS. Although I like the fact it has a ramp. Clearly, accessibility has been part of Gallifreyan design long before it was in humanity. But yes, they clearly see these Sontarans as sort of thugs who smash their way through places, and that's seeing as they are military men, that is a not unreasonable interpretation of them. And here he takes his mask off, and all the black makeup's gone. I mean, that was literally 5 minutes ago. And I mean, as I say, I remember the first time I saw this, it just seemed to be that the mistakes or discontinuities or just slapdash lack of cohesion did not stop. It wasn't just when you were sort of thinking, oh well, maybe I should give this a chance. Another example occurred, and look, I mean, this design is. I mean, they've just stuck some pictures up in a replica of that. I mean, I suppose they've replicated. I love the way I love the way Milton John says ancillary power station as if that were bleeding obvious, which of course it isn't at all, because it looks like an art gallery in a hospital. And I suppose it's quite funny having the Venus de Milo, but that's clearly made of polystyrene. But the way that he says ancillary power station, as if any fool know, but with also a certain amount of classy disdain. So he stripped it bare of all the pictures. That was quite a neat effect, actually, that they sort of back out of shot and that happens, and then they back in again with they walk back in again with the locked off camera. That kind of works, I guess. But here he is. He's continuing to be very good value. Stuart Fell got far more lines than I'd remembered here. Norman Rutherford plays one of the other Sontarans. He died a couple of years ago. Derek Deadman is mistakenly referred to as a stuntman in the documentary for this on the DVD, which he was not. Anthony Reid says that, so I think he's mixing him up with Stuart Fell, but that's the sort of thing that shouldn't have made it into the programme. But there we go. So here we are. The Doctor has built a big gun, as has been wittily pointed out. That would never happen in the series these days, that the Doctor would just take a big gun and zap the baddie into nothing. But it's not an ultimate. I mean, they don't, for what he's about to do, he doesn't even, because he doesn't know about the grenade yet, does he? He doesn't. He could have just said, Leela, go to the follow store with your big knife. But I mean, all this stuff about the keys at least comes back. You know, at least some stuff that has been planted earlier, comes to the fore at the end in order to feel like the package is having the bow all tied up very neatly. And that stuff about the Darkest Age, John Arnott does superbly. And that Sontaran had a little bit of attitude, didn't he? No Chancellor forward. He said something like, I'm a trooper with a little bit of a sarcastic commentary and a little bit of a riposte. John Arnott appears quite late in this episode, but I seem to recall he breaks the credit system, which, as I pointed out, is usually the guest cast in order of appearance. But because Storr and Borusa get single captions to themselves, I think it would have had to have gone Storr and then a couple of people and then Borusa on his own and then a couple of people. So I think Borusa gets shoved forward, so it's single caption, and then everybody in order of appearance, and those two single captioners in order of appearance. If anybody is following my logic as to the strenuously worked out bespoke credits for this particular story, which I know is something that is a particular borefest I can unleash. It's always a trouble with the Sontarans, isn't it? Is that lovely neck brace that they have. If you're not careful, the nose ends up resting on it. That doesn't happen with Lynx, though. Lynx is easily the best Sontaran. He's very good at doing the import stuff of this, Tom Baker. You know, that kind of intense stare that he does. He doesn't betray much emotion. Because he knows he can do it. He can just do it with the voice and the intensity of his look. Which suits an actor who can be somewhat lazy sometimes. But here we are. This is Doctor Who, and we've basically got, and it's the invasion of time. Two races invade Gallifrey. The ultimate frontier has been crossed, and the climax is one of them and one character, the Doctor, in a room. One's got a grenade that he moves very slowly. He's been taking lessons off the master in Colony in Space with his Bakewell tart. So the face-off is between two single characters, one with a grenade, one with a gun, and the one with the gun shoots the one with the grenade before he can do the grenade. And also the idea of a grenade that can wipe out the whole Sontaran fleet and that's some grenade. That's packing a pretty punch. And again, I suspect this was Tom Baker saying, "Wouldn't it be witty if why don't I?" Because why would the Doctor do this? This is absolutely ridiculous. He could get killed for what? I mean, he times it very, very nicely. He can definitely deliver the line that undercuts the tension and does all that. You know, he does. Well done, Milton Johns. But yeah, why is he dragging his feet? It's just because Tom Baker said, "Wouldn't it be witty if?" And everyone goes, "Yeah, all right, mate, all right." And the Doctor's had his memory wiped of the invasion of time, which some might say would be a blessing. Oh, I don't know. It's still perfectly watchable. It's not boring. You know, and also, and I appreciate this a lot more now as well. Certainly in light of a lot of modern Who, it's not pretending that it's the most important thing in the world and that it's got something to tell you. And I used to yearn for Doctor Who to do that, but now I kind of wanted to sometimes just say, we're just gonna have fun. And so I do appreciate that it sort of rattles along, but it is quite lazy. It is quite self-indulgent, and it's a laziness that's a bit pleased with itself as well. And I think there are so many things wrong with it that could have been sorted out by minor tweaks. For example, we know that they wanted Leela to stay on, but I still think this is a terrible, terrible exit for one of the show's best companions, and a great disservice to one of the show's greatest actresses. And I think credit to Chris Tranchell and to Louise Jameson for trying to make this work. And it's really odd to go, because the whole, even as a kid, the K9 Mark II thing baffled me, because I don't know why they just don't have K9 again. It doesn't look any different. Do we really need an in-universe explanation for the fact that they make the prop slightly less irritatingly noisy? The fact that they've improved it, we don't need in-continuity reasons for improving a special effect, But I do like this. This is what we need a bit more of in modern television, full stop. That is Tom Baker signalling that the Doctor is actually really upset and that it's all a mask, but he can't tell her. Everyone. Oh, and that was very good because everybody stayed still and we didn't have the judder. Well done. That was very well done. Somewhere, Louise Jameson proves her worth by the fact that that's a terrible line. Where's he? I wonder where he's gone. Somewhere else, she says, but she invests it with loss, admiration, profundity. Two innocuous, frankly, inadequate words. And then that with the head is lovely. I do that with Bernard. But that's she's giving it all that. But I really don't see the need for an in-universe explanation as to why we have a new K9 next year. I suppose he has a different voice as well, but again, don't draw attention to that. And Tom Baker breaks the fourth wall, and the camera loves him. But it's odd. It's odd. It's a weird mixture. But, as I say, on the positive, it does rattle along those very repetitive scenes. They are at least throwing some jokes in. And as I say, I don't think all of Tom Baker Doctor Who period jokes of this period work. Nesbitt and Presta, they did absolutely sod all. It just feels like a first draft, doesn't it? It just feels very, very like a first draft. That then instead of everybody going, well, let's absolutely fucking nail this, they sort of go, well, it's a bit slapdash, so let's bug it together but have a laugh while we're doing it. Ken Westbury, film cameraman, very, very good. Oh, Richard Conway and Colin Mapson, very good. Very good visual effects guys, but no, Barbara Gosnold, I'm afraid, name coming up here, she is, as not, I fear, covered herself in glory with that story. And Gerald Blake, the director of The Abominable Snowmen. But I know from Bernard Holly, who was great friends with Gerald Blake, that Gerald struggled for work a bit towards the end and was a bit sad. I understand from some sources that Gerald was he's the sort of director that people who are nice say, "Oh yes, he liked to party," which basically means he was a bit of a pisshead. That is my I don't want to speak ill of it. Well, I'm not speaking ill when I describe somebody as a bit of a pisshead, because I am a self-confessed and open drunk. I'm a recovering alcoholic, so when I say it with sympathy and as an observation for of character and of event, but it's not just with a wink and a mimed cup to the mouth as a lot might. There's a kinship there, but also a slight melancholy. But it is also an indication of I think, that can be reflected in work or approach to work or whatever. Anyway, I mention it because it's one of the things I have picked up, but I don't say it definitively, so I suppose I'm essentially gossiping, but that's the impression I have been given, and that's very sad, isn't it? Certainly the stuff about him struggling for work latterly was definitely true. That's a shame, because I think Abominable Snowman is very nicely directed, and it's odd, isn't it, that Williams brings back Blake, brings back Alan Bromley, brings back people who've done single who's in the past, maybe thinking, well, if I get these old people who've done it in the past when Doctor Who was great back, they will bring some old school heft and experience to it. And Bromley doesn't make it to the end of Nightmare of Eden, and Gerald Blake can't hold this together, whether he can't control Tom Baker, whether there just isn't time, whether he got the script so late and they just had to do it where they do it. But I still think you can rein in some of the tattiness. Yeah, I don't. It's the tattiness is not necessarily a problem. It's the self-satisfaction with the tattiness that I think condemns it. The this'll do complacency, with a slight smack of aren't we having fun as well, which I like watching outtakes where everybody's having fun, but when everybody's having fun providing something that isn't as much fun as they're having, that's when I have a slight issue. But I have to choose my favourite thing and a bonus thing. So my favourite thing about this episode and my favourite thing about the whole thing. Now, I think I was going to choose whatever it is that Milton John says when he says, anti-gravity chamber or whatever it is. It's not that, but because he says it with a sort of air of somebody who's in a production from a completely different century. You could say that in a stage play in that way, and as if you were saying, well, this is the drawing room of my house at Assizes or whatever. But it wasn't quite as funny as I'd remembered it, and I think I was more taken this time than I have been with the Sontaran mask. I rather like the Sontaran mask, especially with the black makeup. It's mad that they have that terrible continuity. I like the garden room. I like the image of the Sontaran with the greenery. I loved Barusa reading the Daily Mirror. That might be my favourite thing. It's tricky with the Sontaran mask because I hated it for so long. I thought it was completely wrong, and as I say, too not symmetrical enough, not neat enough. But the gargoyle, the golem. I remember in the book of the Sontaran Experiment with Ian Marter describing the Sontaran as the golem, which is a very good interpretation of it. This sort of ugly, sort of almost stone-like, statue-like, But and the shape does lend itself well to that. But it's still nothing like as good as Lynx, and that seems to me mad that every time they do it worse. But I think freed from the shackles of it being a bootleg and my shock of the moustache all those years ago, and the fact that it's the centrepiece of a massive continuity error, I do like that black mask in that mask with the rings around the eyes and the black mouth, which just makes them seem sort of oily, and I like that. And I think Ian Marter, again, in his books, is very good at making things oily and having acrid breath and all that. And you can sort of get you can impose that upon this visual if you so desire. But no, I think I might go for Barusa reading the Daily Mirror because it's an example of something that's quick and quite witty. And what I love about Doctor Who is incongruity of juxtaposition. You know, this very dignified man who is saving every scene he's in by undercutting it with, or like when he's doing the stuff about the gun, absolutely giving it the welly that it needs, and giving you absolutely no impression that he's not going to try and make every scene as good as he can. Sometimes by playing it absolutely straight, sometimes by giving it a bit of a raised eyebrow. Let's hear it one more time for Lofty Disdain. But there's something witty, I think, about him reading the Daily Mirror. And I also noticed that the liquid that comes up the straw is clear, but the glass is purple, which is quite funky, isn't it? Because you think, oh, is he drinking a purple drink? So I'm going to choose that, I think, as my favourite thing for episode 6. And for my bonus, well, it's got to be Louise Jameson, hasn't it? It has to be Louise Jameson for doing her best. I mean, if I want to choose a specific moment, the way she says somewhere else, but just the way she does everything, the little touches on the arm here, the way she keeps those repetitive scenes going. She is constantly bringing her A game, even when the opposition, and sometimes Tom Baker is the opposition, don't deserve it. And we, the audience, I think, are so grateful to her for I think sometimes, papering over the joins. She's so good. She's so good. And because this is her last episode, I think she deserves a nod for her whole tenure. But there's so much in this episode that is an example of why she's worth her weight in gold, including just everything that she did with those 2 simple words, somewhere else, which is not a great sort of coda and epitaph, but she manages to make it sing, despite the fact that I would, she must inwardly be furious with the sort of naff, cursory, actually misconceived way that she departs, which, as I say, with just a rewrite, just an afternoon of going, well, should we write a couple of scenes where Nesbin does something brave, and then she can say, take on the Outlaws, blah, blah, anything. I just could, with a bit more effort. Now, I don't know how up against it they were, but I think with studio bound videotape drama, you can do it at the last minute. They could do it at the last minute if they had a mind to it. But I think everyone just couldn't be bothered. So Louise Jameson and Leela, not for her leaving scene, but for her eclipsing her leaving scene just because she's so good. But my thing for episode 6 is John Arnott reading the Daily Mirror. But with an honourable mention for the plant room, the way Milton John says that line about where they are, and the black ringed Sontaran mask, which then loses points for the way that Derek Deadman puts his helmet on. What's Nev going to choose for episode 6? Where is he? He's in front of a tree.
Hello, Toby. I am back in the wilds of Gallifrey. As you can see, it's been fenced off. It's a little dangerous since the Time War, so they don't really let people in. And it's very fitting that I am here in the wilds of Gallifrey because my choice for episode 6 of The Invasion of Time is Louise Jameson and her performance and how she handled her own departure from the show. I don't think it's a secret that her departure wasn't particularly well planned. They were hoping that she would stay, but she didn't, and they just knocked together this love interest at the last minute. And at the time, I thought it was quite fitting that she stayed on Gallifrey because she had this dual personality like Gallifrey does. She has the sophistication and the savagery, and she found sophistication in the Time Lords and savagery in the wilds outside. So in many ways, it's the perfect planet to stay on. And to me, at the time, I thought it was very fitting and quite inevitable. And it was great that Louise sold that idea that it was inevitable and it was planned, because in those final scenes, when she's deciding to leave, nothing is helping her. The script isn't helping her. Tom's certainly not helping her. But she sells it, and I think she does an incredibly good fist out of something which isn't particularly well planned. And that pretty much sums up the Invasion of Time. People doing incredibly good jobs in the face of not the ideal circumstances. So that's my choice for episode 6. It's Louise Jameson's performance and how she handles her own departure from Doctor Who.
Ah, well, that was my bonus thing, not my thing for episode 6, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, it's because I wanted to go beyond the departure. I wanted to sort of acknowledge the fact that Louise Jameson, I don't think, has given a bad performance throughout her. I mean, not even for a moment. You know, when you say sometimes people haven't given a bad performance, you know that they have the occasional bit that doesn't quite land for you. But Louise Jameson, I don't think, has a single moment that is not truthful and good and elevated by her diligence and thoughtfulness and intelligence as an actress. But that means that... So I was regretting not choosing that as my thing for episode 6 and then choosing something better as my bonus. But there's no reason my bonus can't have its genesis in part 6, and I think Louise Jameson deserves to be the bonus because she deserves to be the final thing, because if never chosen properly, that would be what we went out on, and it would be a better ending and a better epitaph at the end of this Invasion of Time podcast that she actually gets in the Invasion of Time itself. But no, we're going to see what Nev chooses as his bonus thing. I might have to bring it back to Louise Jameson in order that we don't forget to give her a valedictory eulogy. It's six minutes long, Neb's bonus thing. Let's see what that is.
I'm glad to report that I am now safe and sound back in my TARDIS. I'm currently in the secondary engine room, which has been transmogrified for some reason into a music room, but that's TARDISes for you. This is being recorded a little bit later than my other little recordings because, I've spent a bit of time. I've been a little busy. I've been making my K9 Mark 11, and as you can see, it's smaller and lighter, which I think is very Apple. So that's good. I'm just going to see if it works. Okay. See if it's okay. Oh yeah, very good. Very good. I think that would help me in the quest for the key to time quite admirably. Yes. Now, I expect you want to know what my overall choice is for the Invasion of Time, and I'm afraid I'm going to be a little bit predictable and pick the script. As I said earlier, I used to enjoy reading my target books in sequences, in blocks. I used to pick, say, I'll do all the ones with Harry Sullivan in and go from robot to the Loch Ness Monster. Or I'd pick all of the Pertwee ones to go through, or all of the Pertwee and Sarah Jane Smith ones to go through. And one that I particularly liked doing was season 15. And I particularly liked doing that to get to the Invasion of Time, because I really enjoyed reading that one as the finale. And these books were, as we know, written by Terence in probably an afternoon. So they're no cave monsters and they're no Auton Invasion. They're not really novels. They're practically script books. So I suppose I'm reading it because I enjoy the script rather than the book. And there's a couple of reasons why it really spoke to me. And like a lot of other stories, I really did love the concept of the Doctor doing very non-Who-y things to get to what he wanted to do. His objective was very traditionally Doctor Who, but his behaviour was not. And it really spoke to me. And I look back on all the things I've written for Big Finish and for Doctor Who magazine, and I do tend to do that a lot. I do tend to say, what unusual things can I get the Doctor to do this week? And I think it just really appeals to me. It really appeals to me. And another thing about the script is it's incredibly brave. I mean, the brass balls of writing a script, to having the Doctor as an angry lunatic and putting it in front of Tom Baker, who at that time was an angry lunatic, that really speaks to me too. On both levels, it really, really appeals to me. I've actually done that a little bit myself, putting a script under someone's nose that was basically about them and seeing if they actually had enough self-awareness to realise. And I love to imagine that situation in the read-through where they put that under Tom's nose, and did he get it? Did he understand it? Did he enjoy it? Did he really, really get to grips with what they were putting in front of him and realise what they were saying? I hope that he did, and I hope he took it well. And that's just one level on which the script was quite brave too. On another level, it was incredibly brave because, let's not forget, the first story of this season was cancelled because the Vampire Mutations, the BBC was a bit worried about putting it against their prestige BBC production of Dracula. So they had to cancel a whole script and get Terence to write Horror of Fang Rock. And what Graham Williams did was, well, that's happened, but for the finale of the season, I'm going to satire I, Claudius, a prestige BBC production, which has only been off the air for 8 months. So for the sheer brass balls of doing that, Invasion of Time really, really deserves some credit. I love its crazy off-the-wallness. I love its roller coaster ride of throwing things around, but always having the characters grounded and having obvious baddies, but all the people in the situation, all the Time Lords having their own motives. Baruza, Kellner. I love it giving Leela something to do, going out into the wastelands. I love giving K9 something to do, and at the time I was a huge K9 fan, and I was acutely aware that both Leela and K9 were being used as basically bodyguards for the Doctor. It's certainly in the Sunmakers. So I love they all had their own roles. I just love the script, the way it just loves allowing the ground to move beneath our feet and change the situation from episode to episode. I mean, the first 2 episodes is the Doctor going mad. The second 2 episodes is the Doctor slowly revealing his plan, but going about it in a very unorthodox way. And the machinations of the Time Lords. Some of them want to assassinate the Doctor. Some of them want to help him. Some of them want to kill the Doctor, but the leader's telling them not to. And the final 2 episodes being this run around with the TARDIS, which doesn't work particularly well. But by that time, I'm pretty well sold. So that is my overall choice. It is the script for the Invasion of Time.
Well, Nev, you were a sterling advocate, and he's no mean writer himself, so I'm not going to comment on that too much. I don't think I would have chosen the script, but what this is all about is being celebratory, and in fact going through it, and it's happened both times I've watched this episodically. The other time I did it was for Running Through Corridors. When you break it into constituent parts, you do see it's not one homogeneous sort of tatty whole. You do see the bits that work as drama, and as the sort of script and the story develops. It's actually shocking how much it comes juddering to a halt in the bit that I think one always has in one's memory of when the story picks up, when the Sontarans arrive. That's actually when the story kind of stops. It is nice that the key stuff comes back in, and the wiping of the Doctor's memory and all of that sort of ties in with all that lovely Mad King stuff that Nev talked about. But it just feels it needs another draft or so to me. But it does have lots of lovely bits in it, and there are lots of lovely bits. But for me, a lot of it is what the actors are trying to do to lift it, and sometimes they fail. That's where the lack of cohesion comes in as well. But as I was trying to say before, it rattles along. There's plenty going on. I'm not bored during it. I don't think. There's just quite often, just as it's winning you over, something happens that's slapdash or misjudged, or that doesn't cohere. But that's not what this podcast is about. It's about celebrating, and I think Nev celebrated the script brilliantly there. So why am I even saying anything? Let's let him celebrate it in his way, as he did just then, and then allow him to immediately plug his wares, which I warn you are slightly out of date, but I'm going to play them anyway, because then he has sent me a coda which will perhaps contradict some of what you're about to hear. But so here's what Nev was up to when he recorded this. Some of it may have happened already. Some of it may not have ever happened. Some of it may still be. I don't know. Here's what you could have won.
Hello, Toby. I gather I have one last bit of filming to do for you, and that is regarding plugging my wares. First of all, before I do that, I'd just like to thank you so much for allowing me onto your podcast. I adore it, and I listen to all the episodes, and you are doing a wonderful thing, helping people like me come to grips with their obsessions. As for plugging, I don't really need to plug a lot of things because they trundle on whether people pay attention to them or not. Private Eye trundles on, and so does Dead Ringers. But there are a few things. I'm writing a graphic novel for B7E called The Furnace, which is a graphic novel about demons in London fighting Jesus Christ. And I think that's going to go on a Kickstarter. I think the first episode, the first bit, will be done, and the rest will be on Kickstarter. So by the time this comes into your podcast airwaves, there may be a page which you can contribute to keep it going. The second thing I'm plugging is I'm writing some novels for Titan, and they're detective comedy novels in the vein of my Mervyn Stones, but this time the detective is a fan of an old science fiction series who has their own podcast and who obsessively deals in tiny facts about this series and wants to interview everyone involved in this old science fiction series. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, Toby, but I don't know. Depending on when you listen to this, that could be on the shelves if this goes out in 2024. But if it does, then that's where they'll be. Anyway, thank you again, Toby. I've really, really enjoyed this, and keep up the good work and keep going. There's lots more episodes to do.
Thanks, Nev. And yes, some of that will sound familiar to you as work that you've heard. But Nev has said a conclusion. It's always very nice to hear people like Nev saying such positive things, because I do wonder about this. But I mean, look, you listen to it, so it must have something to it. But it is just me stuttering along. So I am grateful that there is still a market is the wrong, but there is still an audience for this, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you, because it's not like it's even a conversation. It's a monologue by somebody with a stammer. Anyway, hi, Toby. As the video I sent you, Plugging My Wares, was recorded during the Earth Year 2023, says Nev, could you read out this addendum after you play it? So, firstly, the graphic novel Kickstarter I mentioned has been pulled into a black star. Maybe it will escape in the future, but not at this moment in time. Secondly, I did say that I didn't need to plug Dead Ringers, but hey presto, since recording that message, we have embarked on a 25th anniversary tour that continues until March. Most dates have been sold out, but tickets are still available for the London Palladium on the 2nd of February. Here's the advantage of being a patron, because I think non-patrons will get that after this. So non-patrons, don't go looking for tickets on the 2nd of February 2027. I'm afraid you have missed your chance to see the Dead Ringers. Should be quite a night, says Nev. Me and the missus will be there. And if you know who the missus is, there's some lovely Who connectivity there. Thirdly, the books I mentioned writing for Titan are now finished and on the shelves. The first is called The Fan Who Knew Too Much, where a bunch of nerds attempt to solve an historic murder that took place in Brighton during location filming of an old 80s science fiction show. And there's lots and lots of lovely references and jokes, and just a whole evocation of a way of life that I think all listeners would understand. They're great, those Titan books. I hope they're a great success, because I read them all and really enjoyed them. Their unorthodox investigation involves pitching a Blu-ray extra to the BBC, a now-and-then documentary that bring the original actors back to Brighton to reenact scenes from the filming. As the saying sort of goes, the play's the thing wherein they'll catch the conscience of the king. The second novel is called Lies and Dolls, which concerns a serial killer who only kills action figures. The priceless figures get stolen and sent back to the collectors in bits, to their obvious distress. Can they track this doll dismemberer down before he kills again? If you're a fan of detective novels, then do us a favour and have a read. And if you do like them, please rate them on Goodreads and Amazon, because every review helps. Thus ends my addendum. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Nev. I've really enjoyed Nev's contribution, and I know you have too. And what's a joy is that Nev is also a patron, which I feel very guilty about. So he's also been responding as patrons do in the comments under each episode. So it's been a double whammy. We've been bookended. I was going to use a phrase that got Wyn Evans sacked from Strictly and everything else BBC-wise. Not that I've got much to get sacked from, but I won't use that. I shall use bookend instead, which is, I think, a much more... well, it's a much more literary... we were talking about the Doctor Who's literary heft. It's a much more literary metaphor than the somewhat more gastronomic one that is itself a metaphor for something more carnal that I could... Should we go away from where I was leading us? The whole reason I didn't say it was to not take us there, and I've pretty much... I've rotated us through every angle and nearly got us burnt in the flames. Right, that is it for the Invasion of Time. One of the longest in-between episodes odysseys that I've done through a Doctor Who story, because it seems like so much water has passed under the bridge since I embarked on episode 1. Whereas for you listeners, it's just Happy Times and Places 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out you go. But I've certainly aged. I think I've had various different moustaches. Oh, much like the Sontarans. Christmas has been and gone. Oh, in fact, when I started this, I was 51. I am now 52. I've aged a year doing the Invasion of Time. But I suspect Graham Williams and Anthony Reid did as well. But even though, and some of the comments were unusually harsh, but I think nobody laid into it without context either. That's what's quite fun about this, is that we're trying so hard to find nice things to say that even when we have bad things to say, I think they are qualified with some rigour. It's not just like, don't really like this. So it's been an interesting exercise, and of course we've all very much tried to give it a go. And I know from some of the correspondence, people have said it's not a story I really think about or go to, but I'm going to go in again. And I think you definitely can. I think there's a lot of the conspiracy theory stuff, the politics of Gallifrey, some of that sort of rather paranoid stuff, particularly with the Time Lords getting chucked out and the political machinations of Kellner. Some of that stuff's really, really good, and some of the actors are blissful. So there's still stuff to be mined here in the Invasion of Time. Even a broken time story gets it right a couple of times an episode. But really, mostly thanks to Nev Fountain for making such a witty and a loving and insightful contribution. I'm lucky to be surrounded by such people, and of course all of those who contribute via Patreon too. I'm a lucky chap, and I'm grateful to all of you listeners out there. And who knows what story we'll do next? Should I go for one that's slightly easier to love? I don't know. I think it's sometimes more interesting to go for the ones that are less celebrated. But there's something about final episodes set on Gallifrey. I think the Deadly Assassin episode 4 was a really long Happy Times and Places episode. This one is clocking in at an hour and 3/4 for a 25-minute episode of Doctor Who. I better go, otherwise this invasion is going to run out of time. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Nev Fountain. He is at Nev Fountain on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, at Nev Fountain everywhere. I'm grateful to Nev and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, Peter Burns, James Curray-Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Nick Delisle, Daniel Brennan, James Brindley, Dara Carville, Luke Ashby, Robert Davis, Andy Priestner, Steve Jenner, John McClay, Daniel Mybus, Colin Varney, Earworm, Alex Tilbury, Steve Appleman, Josh Bernard, Michael Page, Tim Knight, Harry Palmer, Mr. M.L. Dunstan, Brandon F. Moore, Darth Selfie, Owen Hargreaves, Timothy K. Brown, The Jason Davis, Andrew, DW Fan 91, Simon King, David Nicol, The Unquest Garth Maker, and Lee Coburn. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name to be read out on the credits, well, that is one of the joys to be had from being a patron at patreon.com/Toby Haydock. One of the main joys and the most invoked is to comment on the episodes as they're released, because unlike getting them, tumbling out one on top of the other, you have time on Patreon to listen to an episode, gather your thoughts about them, about it, and then comment and interact with lovely, friendly people as well. And if you're Richard Bignell, correct something what I said. But that's not all that's there. There's exclusive behind the scenes looks at my Blu-ray and DVD content. You get all the podcasts well in advance, 6 months now at least for Happy Times and Places, and a few months ahead for the other releases too. And you get exclusives including monthly AMAs, Ask Me Anythings. So there's all sorts of fun to be had. 2 or 3 releases per week generally, and as well as, and I don't count these amongst the 2 or 3 pictures of my dog, and he's lovely. You can also support these on Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock, where you can just make a one-off donation and not be involved in any of the monthly obligations or shenanigans or indeed public facing stuff, and because I know some of you are very happy to sponsor me, but are less happy for anybody to know that you have. Punch. Yes, yeah. You're the silent support, no less appreciated, but you've still got your street cred. Well done. And you could also support these without doing anything financial at all, and that is just as appreciated if you like, subscribe, give some kind words, a few lines of review, thumbs up, follows, boosts, everything you can, and word of mouth. Tell your friends, tell everybody down the pub, say it at Doctor Who conventions. But if there are places like Apple and Spotify where you haven't clicked the thumbs up, done the 5 stars, they're really important, and put a few lines of review, all of that stuff really helps. I also have a YouTube channel where these are starting to go out on video as well. I'm getting a bit experimental there. I haven't quite worked out exactly how I'm doing it. Bear with me. But if you like the visual element, well, I'm looking to introduce that as well. So I keep working hard to try and give you what you want, to cover all the platforms I possibly can. But if you've got any ideas for that sort of thing, feed it back to me, because I am very much a one-man band without any instruments. So, God, even the blurb is lasting long on this one. That's the end of this piece of blurb. And now we have this piece of blurb where I point you to my social media. So let's just say I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Twitter at Toby Haydock and at Haydock Podcasts. I have a Facebook page, and I am also on Instagram at Toby.Haydock. I have a comedy club called Excess Malarkey that is on Blue Sky at Excess Malarkey and Instagram at Excess Malarkey, and it's there in the flesh every Tuesday in Manchester. Excess Malarkey, the best value comedy, and indeed on many occasions the best quality comedy going on in the north of England on a Tuesday night, full stop, and then also on a Tuesday night, and the last Sunday of every month where there's a new material night. I think I should probably grind to a halt now, because this is clocking in at very long. I'm so sorry that took so long to... Steve Hatcher mentioned, I think when I was on episode 4, it's taken a long time for you to get through the Invasion of Time, and that was at the beginning of December that he mentioned that. Maybe I wasn't on episode 4 by then, but yeah, it's taken a good couple of months, but that's okay. I think you get different things from when you watch an episode, a story, all in one go in quick succession. And when you watch episodes, I mean, it'd probably be better to do it with no longer than a week's gap between each episode. And I'm obviously going to try to start doing that again now that I'm settled a bit, now that January is over and my tax is paid and Christmas is done and my birthday's over and catch up of admin and all of that has been achieved. But, well, I mean, not all of it's been achieved. And approximately, I would say 44 minutes less admin has been done today, because this podcast is, I think, about 44 minutes longer than it needs to be. But there's clearly some stuff in there. Hope you like it. Off I go. I'm off to shave off my moustache before I get into the next room and confuse the hell out of everybody.